Okay, I invite everyone to close your eyes and take a nice big deep breath. And let it all go. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. Amen. Right, so last week we were working on the dreamer of the dream, and then I kind of segued a bit in regard to the idea of the gap, because in the dreamer of the dream section it talked about the gap, so I talked a little bit about the gap. And basically the gap is it's this that we have identified as reality that we've put all our focus into. And that gap, as the Course would describe it, is really nothing. It's the birthplace of illusions, but illusions are nothing. So a lot of the process is recognizing that that is a gap, and that gap is keeping us from connecting with what truth is. So if you would like to read along, we're going to be in the Dreamer the Dream, which starts on page 581, and I'm going to actually go to 584 in paragraph number 13. Jesus tells us, you are the dreamer. You are the dreamer of the world of dreams. No other cause has, nor ever will. No other cause it has, nor ever will. Nothing more fearful than an idle dream has terrified God's Son and made him think that he has lost his innocence, denied his Father, and made war upon himself. So fearful is the dream, so seeming real, he could not awaken to reality without the sweat of terror and scream of mortal fear, unless a gentler dream preceded his awakening and allowed his calmer mind to welcome, not to fear, the voice that calls with love to waken him, a gentler dream in which his suffering was healed and where his brother was his friend. God willed he waken gently and with joy, and gave him means to waken without fear. And we know there's lots of sections in the Course that are pretty challenging and rough to read through. And even though this one's a bit that way, it actually ends with a kind of happily ever after on that last line, which is always encouraging. So again, Jesus wants to keep reminding, he speaks this type of words throughout the Course, because the idea of us being the dreamer of this world, when I'm so identified with the character in the dream as being me, of what the cause of this world is, it takes some great diligence for us to keep bringing our mind back to the realization that the dreamer of the dream is the identity I've taken on by choosing for separation. And this character called me is just a character in the dream that the Son of God, who chose for separation, has chosen to identify. And we've also made something outside of ourselves so that we could project our guilt, sin, and fear in them, so we could play the part of an innocent victim. So it's this very tightly woven, and actually Ken has a set of takes, it's called the web of specialness. And I always thought that was such a great word usage, because we are caught in a web, and we know, if you've ever seen a spider web, the spider can, just zap some of those bugs, pull it in, and they're stuck in that web, and there's no way out of that web. And in a lot of ways, we've set up this web of which we are stuck in, and we think it's the spider that's got us. But in truth, we're the ones that set up the web because that was the way we could remain an innocent victim, blame somebody else for the problem, and get away with having killed off God to exist in a separated state. So that's the price we're paying, is that I have a perpetrator always in order to play the part of an innocent victim. So again, Jesus is reminding us, you are the dreamer of the world of dreams, not Marianne, but the Son of God who chose against love because he wanted to find out what it would be like if he was God. And at that moment, when he took it seriously, the experience of a oneness God disappeared, because now we have a two-ness. There's a me who's separated and there's a God. And oneness no longer exists, because in order for oneness to be in existence, we have to get rid of two-ness. Right? So no other cause it has nor ever will. And if we were spiritually advanced enough to really get that, that would be such a reinforcing experience, because it was one simple mistake and one simple solution. In fact, in the workbook lessons, there is one workbook lesson that says there's one problem, one solution. What's the problem? We believe we separated. What's the solution? You didn't separate. You're still at home in oneness. But because we're so caught up and wrapped up, and I'll use this chart to show how the complication unfolds, there's just so much within the context of the illusion that draws us in, pulls us forward, that it's hard to even imagine that there's really just one problem. Because you see, I've got all these problems, or I've got all these things I've got to accomplish and take care of. What do you mean there's one problem and one solution? But if we understand the basic concept of this, the one problem is we chose to separate, and then we splintered off into bazillions of little pieces and parts, of which each one of the characters of the little parts has both sides of the mind held within it. But then I take an identity of an individual me in opposition to a world who is always attacking or causing me problems, or is why I happen to experience myself as losing my peace, when in truth, it's really just simply the choice.
Marianne?
Did somebody say something?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, in that first part of the sentence, the you that they're talking about is not us.
Absolutely correct. And I think especially for people when they first begin reading the Course, when you hear those words or see those words, you immediately think, oh, he's talking to me. Marianne's the dreamer of the dream. But that's not correct. He means the Son of God, who separated from love, is the dreamer of this dream that's made up of a dualistic content, of which is all the opposite of what truth is. So the dream we're seeing is made up of all the things that are listed here: hate, form, void, emptiness, illusion, uncertainty, death, dread, time, special love, special hate, guilt, chaos, lack, fear, intense pain. And the list goes on and on and on and on. And we keep thinking that we're going to find love here, when in essence, the thought system of the ego is the total opposite of what the thought system of love is. And you're not going to find love over here. But we did make up a love, which the Course calls special love, but that love is a, how shall I word it? A limited love that will never provide what the love of God will provide, because it doesn't have the equipment to be able to do that. It's a good substitute compared to special hate, and it's more comfortable, but in its essence, it doesn't have the qualities of the love that oneness has. So I guess you could say we tolerate it, we like it better than hate, but it still does not provide for us what we really yearn for within our hearts. So nothing more fearful than an idle dream has terrified God's Son and made him think he has lost his innocence. So if you think about the word idle, and if your car's idling, it means it's not going anywhere. It's, you know, it's rumming its motor, but it's just sitting there doing nothing, as a car would do if it's moving on the road. So he's basically saying this dream we're having is just an idle dream. It's not who we are. It is a dream. It is an illusion. And no matter what takes place here will never affect what truth is within your real mind. And it has made him think that he has lost his innocence. So why would he lose his innocence if he believes in the dream? Because his innocence is like the sun behind the cloud, and I can't access it as long as I am playing in the avenue of the ego. So in other words, the sun is here, but we've literally covered it over by the ego. Now we only experience the ego. And though the sun is always there, we have to remove the blocks of the ego aside in order to experience what that truth is. But in our experience with identifying with the ego, we believe we've lost our innocence. We believe we've lost our connection with love. And as long as we continue to feed into the ego, we won't be able to access the memory of our innocence and our love.
We put something else in place of it, didn't we?
Pardon me, Donna, I didn't quite hear you.
We made our own, made up our own love and said that this is what it is.
Correct.
And we put it in place of.
Correct. And whether it's a physical love with another person, or if it's if you're a shockaholic, you know, you're an alcoholic, into drugs, whatever it is a form of substitute for the love of God. And within the context of the illusion, from our point of view, that's better than nothing. But again, that will never replace the connection with love, because it's lacking, it's faltered, it's not complete, it's not everything as love is. But again, within the context of the illusion, for the most part, we'd rather have a little of something than none at all. And so a lot of times we are challenged by trusting that when we drop our attachment to things such as special love, that it's not going to be better when we choose for real love, because we don't trust this process yet. And as we keep moving forward and becoming more connected with that oneness, and we begin to trust it more, then we're more willing to give to the Holy Spirit even those special aspects of love versus hate within the world. All right, so then it says, denied his father. So when we chose for separation, we denied our father. And not only did we deny our father, we actually denied our true identity. Because now I think I'm this, and I have totally, in my mind, disengaged from this, because I'm either identified with this thought system or this thought system at any given time. And as you see, there's a line down the middle where it can't be crossed. So if I'm aligned with the ego, I've relinquished my connection in my mind of who I am. So I've denied my father, and I've also denied myself. I made war upon himself. So the reason why we made war upon ourselves is because now we live in a war zone. This is a kill or be killed place. This is a place of peace and joy and oneness. This is the opposite. So we, guess you could say, threw away our connection with God and our identity with what and who we really are. And we bought this new package, and then we forgot that this was what was there before. And then we lived in the guilt, sin, and fear, and then projected into the world to get rid of the guilt, sin, and fear. But I still have the blueprint, and now I can play the part of an innocent victim, which also means I always have to have a perpetrator if I'm going to play the part of an innocent victim. And so there's a part of me, as Marianne, who would say, I don't want this perpetrator to show up in my life. And it doesn't matter who or what that perpetrator is. It could be a cracked fingernail, it could be a person, it could be your toaster, it can be anything. I, as Mary Ann, would say, I don't want this perpetrator to come walking in my house. But on the level of the setup of this web, I not only want them to show up, I need them to show up so that I can play the part of an innocent victim. So it's a very convoluted storyline of which we're only aware of small part of it. And we don't, or at least before we came to the course, did not have an awareness of all the ways that this was set up and put into motion. All right, so Jesus goes on to say, so fearful is the dream, so seeming real, he could not waken to reality without the sweat of terror and the scream of mortal fear, unless a gentler dream preceded his awakening and allowed his calmer mind to welcome, not to fear, the voice and that calls with love to waken him. A gentler dream in which his suffering was healed and where his brother was his friend. All right, that's quite a long sentence, so I will kind of chop it up a bit. So fearful is the dream. And we all know, despite the fact that some days go fairly well in our lives, we also know how quickly our life can turn around and how quickly we can be, I guess you could say, dumped into terror and fear about something. And it can be something subtle, it can be something very, in the worldly way, terrifying. Certainly the coronavirus put quite a spin on the world, where suddenly one day we were just walking along in our what we call normal life, and suddenly bam, the coronavirus came into our awareness and has been tail spinning us basically ever since that, which seems very significant in the world. And I think everybody would agree that there is an experience of that being very significant. But if we were really observant and we went back to the day before any one of us heard about the coronavirus and really examined our life that day, and we were honest, we would all be aware that even before the coronavirus, the day before, there were many things that occurred in my life that were taking my peace away. So the ego, I guess you could say, way of being is, let's find something within the dream that will take my peace away. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if it's a tried and true way that I've experienced before, or if it's a brand new one. And it doesn't matter if it's subtle or if it's major in our life experience. Anything that can take our peace away is part of the setup of this whole illusion, and it's kept into place because the Son of God is either afraid to go home, isn't willing to let go of its identification as itself, or it still wants to be right. When we chose to separate, we did it because we wanted to be in charge. We didn't want God to be in charge anymore. So one aspect of that is being played out in my identification of holding on to the illusion versus being willing to drop it and connect with the Holy Spirit. All right, so fearful is the dream. And again, we know how quickly something within the dream can seemingly take our peace away. So seeming real. I mean, there's no question in the minds of any of us that our world definitely appears to be real to us. And certainly things that can happen and occur in the world can very easily take our peace away, just like that. He could not waken to reality without the sweat of terror and scream of mortal fear. And basically what Jesus is saying there is, we're so caught up in this insane dream that it's not likely that any one of us is just going to go, oh, that's right, that was an illusion, I'm going home. And I think I gave an example a couple of weeks ago of if a child was in an abusive home and that child, the authorities found out and they came and took that little child away, that child would go kicking and screaming because that child only knows the experience of the setup of that experience. And so maybe after months or years being out of that family experience, that child may then recognize that the scenario that they were involved in was not a very good scenario, and they might be willing to enjoy this new experience. But at that initial moment, that would be similar to the idea that he's talking about. He could not awaken reality without the sweat of terror and scream of mortal fear, because despite the fact that we all know there's a lot of stuff in the world that we would prefer not to have to experience, we're kind of used to it. We're real addicted to it. This is the way it's always been. And that, I'm not so sure I know what that's all about. And do I trust God when I've actually projected onto God all my guilt, sin, and fear? And so, as we know in some spiritual teachings, God is the wrathful God. He could come and get you. He could cause your death. And all of those concepts of a God are the God that we made up in replacement of the true God, who is simply love. And the setup of this process is when you choose for separation, you then automatically project. So we not only project into the world, we projected into a God and made our God something other than an absolute loving God. But we didn't do that to the real God. So the real God, through the process of the Course, is trying to help us understand that He's love, that we're love, and He's waiting for us to come back to that love. And to the degree that we don't trust Him yet, we're going to stick around over here. We might pop over there once in a while and go, oh yeah, that's nice, but I'm going back home where I belong. And we have to continue to work towards our connection with that love in a way where we are comfortable and it doesn't throw us deeper into a fearful experience. And as he goes on to say, unless a gentler dream preceded his awakening and allowed his calmer mind to welcome, not fear, the voice that calls with love to waken him. And I'm going to stop there. And again, this idea of the voice of God is always calling us. This is our true identity. God is going to call us back to what we are, but we can't hear the voice because we're so wrapped up in all the aspects of the insanity of the illusion. And when it talks about the idea and allowed his calmer mind to welcome, when we start with the Course, we are in a very mind chaotic experience. And as we begin to choose differently, our mind slowly begins to calm. And then when something comes up, we might be affected by it, but we're not totally wrapped into the tornado of the illusion. We just, get that nudge of, oh man, something coming down the street here, I better get prepared. And so we can then handle what comes up in a very different way. So let's see. So that voice, and if you notice the word voice is capitalized because that represents love or truth. That voice is going to continue to call us. And I know Ken would often talk about the Course, and he would say it's the love behind the words in the Course that is calling us back. We get very confused with the words, and certainly the word usage in this Course is probably like none other on the planet. And we all know we can read something, we can argue with something about what it means, and we can go on and on and on. But we keep coming back because that voice keeps nudging us, keeps calling us back, because it's calling us back to our true identity. And it's almost like it can't not keep calling us back. But The answer is, am I ready to heed that call? Or am I still so enmeshed in the insanity of the illusion that I can barely even hear that call is happening? And again, as we keep processing through this, that call becomes a little louder and louder, and our intolerance of the insanity of the world begins to increase, and our willingness to continue to choose will come to a more heightened level. All right, so a gentler dream in which his suffering was healed. And so our suffering will begin to be healed because I'm spending more time in the connection of my truth, and where his brother was made his friend. Very aware the way this is set up, in order for me to be an innocent victim, I had to make my brother not my friend, but a perpetrator. So when we start to heal, we're asking to connect over here. And as you see, I see my brother automatically as the same instead of different. But I have to be willing to drop this storyline for a moment to be shown another way of seeing my brother. Because the way this is set up, it's unequivocal. I'm the innocent victim, he's the idiot. And if he would just go do something different, then I could be okay. But that's not true if this is the story that's writing this script. And the problem isn't the script, the problem is the story writer. And the story writer is, in this case, the Son of God, who chose to believe he could separate from love. And that was a lot of words, but I'm going to finish the last sentence, and then if anybody has any comments. God willed he wakened gently and with joy, and gave him means to waken without fear. And so for most of us in this class, the course is that way for us to undo what we set up, but in a gentle way of awakening. And if you think about many things in nature, a flower very gradually unfolds and then comes to fruition. In a lot of ways, that's really what the course is doing. Even though there's a part of us that says, I want this now, I want this now, I want this now, we're really too terrified to have the results of what we're walking towards. So it becomes this very gradual unfolding experience. And I think in retroscope, we can look at, I don't know if I said that word right, but whatever, you know what I'm talking about. We can begin to look back after practicing the course a number of years and go, oh, wow, that was really a very gentle unfolding. At the time, I didn't appreciate it because I was so impatient and I thought I knew what I was really asking for, but we really don't, because what we're asking for is the diminishment of this entire dream. And that doesn't go over too well when we're very addicted to being the character in the dream. And again, with this chart, not only a character in the dream, I'm the hero of the dream that I'm sitting in. So I don't want to let go of the identity of this character called me in order to find out what I am in oneness, because that means I don't exist. So we can't run to white or to oneness or light. We have to very gradually let go of our investment in the story that's not true for us any longer. And that requires us to oftentimes be miserable enough that we're willing to try another way. And that's kind of the way this is wrapped. So anybody have any comments or questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that the way out of the dream is through the dream?
Absolutely. In fact, I would say not just through, but into the dream.
Exactly.
Not going to get out of the dream by avoiding the dream. And, you know, from where we sit, that sounds like the more practical way to do it. But Jesus is actually asking us in numerous times, look at the dream, look what you set up, look what the effects are of what that choice has brought you. Because as long as I'm either blaming it on somebody else or thinking I'm an innocent victim, there's no way I can escape this. And so the course is trying to, you know, bring us back up a little bit higher and see the scenario that's being played out from a higher level, where then it dawns on us, oh man, I don't want to play in this arena any longer.
To us, though, it often looks like suffering.
Well, yes, or sacrifice.
Yes.
Yeah,
terror.
big time. Or terror, you name it. What do you mean I have to give this over?
When
And
you have to put aside self.
absolutely,
We don't
who
want to,
wants
we
do that?
absolutely, yeah, we absolutely do not want to do that.
Absolutely do not want to do that. No. Until we come to that point where we understand, or at least are willing to explore the possibility that putting me down or putting my identity as me down might just yield something better. And initially that's really not an easy process, but I think as we do it more and more, we trust it more and more, and then we become more willing to do it. But initially, no way.
So, but then the words are,
When it says make it about the other.
Well, yes, eventually we're going to make it about the other, because if in my context of observing the world, I'm an innocent victim, they're an idiot, okay? End of story, we're done. Story's written. And after we've studied the Course for a while and are starting to intellectually understand what he's trying to say, there'll come a moment where you're in the middle of a scenario where your brother's attacking you, and your natural response is going to be attack them back, kill or be killed, duh, that's the way it works out. Where there's going to be a split second where the memory of your teachings of the Course are going to come into mind, and there's going to be a part of you that will go, wait a minute, I can drop this and I can choose differently. Now that's going to take some time before we're spiritually mature enough for that to kind of pop into action. But at that moment, it's like, okay, I don't want to be right so much that I have to make my brother wrong. I'm willing to drop that to find another answer that hopefully is going to be better than all the answers I know about. But that's a big step, because we are so addicted to this thought system. This thought system was set up, even though we wrote it, it was set up before Mary Ann popped into the world. And it has been reinforced with every breath she has taken. And then the Course comes along and said, nope, that's all wrong. Come on over here. Let's go party here. And, everything about me is still like a robot programmed to respond from this mindset. So that moment comes where I really start to get that this is not working. But what a ride.
and
Yeah, go ahead.
would you say that all the words in the Course, so I guess I hooked on to some words in one of the lessons this week, and thought of myself not really understanding what the words say, and not being exactly willing to go along with the line. So the line was, today I choose to see a world forgiven, in which everyone is as the face of Christ. And I'm thinking to myself, I was thinking also of you, Jason, talking about when you're reading something that you don't really believe it. And I'm just like teetering on the edge of like, so I don't believe it, but I want to know what it means. I guess that's probably it. I don't really believe it. And I'm thinking, and then I'm going right into my work day, and the first thing that happens is the dog jumps on me, and I'm like, I curse it, and I say, oh yeah, well maybe that was the face of Christ, and I just kicked it in the teeth. I don't want that. So I'm just trying to I feel like I'm on a high wire, and I'm moment to moment having to make a decision about, today I choose.
Right.
Today I choose to see a world forgiven in which everyone shows me the face of Christ. So I'm starting to get used to the idea of that, but I don't really want it. Like I see that I don't really want it. I want to know what's behind it, maybe
Right.
a little bit. So I don't think I'm even willing that much. I'm more curious, like how do I do that? How do I do that? And then of course I venture into where I go, and the dog teaches me that I don't do it with him. And so I just trying to get a where the willingness comes from. Maybe that's what I'm trying to ascertain. So how do I know when I'm really willing? Maybe that's the question.
Right. Well, I appreciate your words, because you were being extremely honest, and you probably are becoming more aware of your honesty. And what I mean by honesty is the recognition that I don't really want it. And that's huge. Ken would harp on that all the time. Make sure you become aware that you don't really want that. You really want to be right. You really want the other guy to be wrong. And that's a huge step in the direction of where we are walking to. And it is literally a moment to moment decision. I have only this moment to make that decision. And if I'm not consciously making a decision to choose differently, I'm just walking through what has already been set up that's on automatic. So it's a no-brainer, even though ultimately it was my choice to choose to separate. So now that we're becoming more conscious, we now have the opportunity, when we're ready, to make that different choice. And there's a kind of a nice quote in the course where it talks about the idea that it's not that you don't still basically want to kill your brother or the dog or whatever is coming down the pipe there. It's that you don't choose to stay there. So it first comes by intellectual understanding of the course, by developing awareness of how this setup is been made. And then as we become more conscious, becoming aware that if I really am not comfortable with the experience that I'm going through, that I now have another choice that I can choose whenever I'm ready to choose it. But to also smile at ourselves and recognize, maybe not today, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to give it up. And that really represents that we're not willing to give this up because we're afraid of that, or I'm still very identified with myself, or that I still want to be right. And as long as those are still intact, ultimately that means I'm not ready to choose. And that's not good or bad. It's just a fact of where you are at this moment. And the more we can observe ourselves in that place without judging ourselves or attacking ourselves, and just go, not today, maybe tomorrow. And if you think about it, with any skill we've ever learned on planet Earth, and I'm going to use the example of riding a bike. We know if you're learning how to ride a bike, you can attempt to get on that bike, 50 times. And then one day you hop on the bike and somehow the balance is there and you take off down the street. But it required every single step before you actually came to that moment where the balance was now intact. And quite literally, that's exactly what's going to happen in this process. We're going to come to that place, but not be ready to step forward in it. And then one day, you're going to come to that place, and it's going to be this unequivocal awareness of, you know what, I don't want this anymore. Holy Spirit, help me see this different. And again, this is a very gentle, unfolding process, of which if we can be very kind to ourselves in the process, it will go actually a lot faster. It's when we browbeat ourselves that we end up back in the ego, and we're stuck again. And the ego, of course, loves nothing more than us being stuck again. because its job is to keep us over here. That help?
There was a part of it that I was, when I was doing it, which I guess this is how the ego continues to work, was I found these words and I thought to myself, these are the words that are going to work. And I'm going to work these words. And not that I didn't feel it was magical, but that it did lead me forward, even though I thought to myself, these are the words. And it was important for me to memorize the words, to put the three parts of this idea together.
Okay.
And then when I was done doing that, I was very excited. And then I listened to the words as I read them again, as I memorized them. And I said, oh my goodness, how am I going to do that? How can I do that? Like, I think that was the first part of it, was I thought, well, I'm telling myself a story here, and I don't know, I can't swallow this exactly. I guess I'll have to try it out. So yes, I feel like then I have to, it's not like fake it till you make it, but it feels like just go along with it. There's a pattern to the word that pushes me from my sense of entitlement or victimhood into the other place. And that's, that's what I know that's valuable. That's really the value. The whole value is that I know that it's more valuable than me thinking that I'm, king of the road and everybody get out of the way.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure. And I really thought your words as you read that, I'm guessing it was a workbook lesson or a phrase in the course where it says, how am I going to do that? And the answer to that question is, you're not going to do that. We're being asked to have the willingness to find out how that's going to be healed. I'm not the one that heals it. I'm the one that drops my investment in the belief of what was set up, which is what we set up, in order to allow the answer to come forth from a source higher than we are. But, again, because we're so identified with being me, we usually associate it with, I've got to figure this out. Well, we don't have to figure this out. We do need to become aware that I'm aligned with this and it's not bringing me what I thought I wanted any longer.
And that the other words are so alien.
Yeah.
And it's like we're speaking to the little green men or something. They're so, it's like the other words are like, so not, not something you're going to blurt out, in the middle of the room or anything. You just, but to be able to get in touch with what it is that once we do it, that what we're supposed to do, I guess, according to the course, we're supposed to, supposed to meaning that when we do that, it's going to work at some point. It's going to work better than what the ego has us going on.
Yes, right. And again, most of us aren't in a place where we absolutely trust that yet. We still think, I gotta have some part of being in control and figuring out how to do this, and I'll call on you later. And until we want that more than anything else, and we trust it more than anything else, we're gonna still do part of the party on our own. And it's cute you used the word alien, and certainly, especially people that are fairly new to the course trying to read it, it is like an alien language. Although in part of that language, Jesus specifically tells us that we are aliens on the planet because we don't belong here. But we flip it around and make it that, Jesus is telling us this story in some kind of, coded words or something. And yet it's really the opposite way that's being played out. But because we've identified with this thought system so long, this is the one that seems natural to us, and this one very foreign to us. But if we keep moving along, keep studying, keep listening, keep reinforcing it, it becomes a language that makes a great deal of sense to us. And the old language will fall away because we won't need it any longer.
I guess it starts out with being like, what in the world is this saying? And then going, oh my God, that can't be right. And then from there, just still have to go back to that you don't like it, don't want it. And then you go, well, what's the alternative? And then that, I guess that's really what ultimately moves us forward.
Right. When we've run out of alternatives, that's when that moment of true willingness comes to the surface, where I absolutely cannot figure out what to do with this, and I throw up my hands and go, okay, I'm giving this one to you. And then of course we'll run back here as quickly as possible because we're too afraid of it. But that sets the motion of healing into place because we finally have that moment of dropping or being willing to drop our investment in what we set up. You know, again, the course even explains that this storyline is ironclad. It was set up that way so that we would never, ever, ever, ever figure out how to leave it. But the course goes on to say, but it's not God proof. It is ego proof, but not God proof. Because you can't make yourself something that you're not. It's literally impossible. You can go and pretend, you know, it's almost Halloween and kids are going to wear their Halloween costumes and people aren't going to recognize them. Well, literally, we can't even recognize ourselves when we identify with the spot system. But who's inside that costume hasn't changed a bit. But we look in the mirror and we see the costume. So we assume the costume is reality. And, you know, a great deal of the course is Jesus very gradually and slowly reminding us that image you see in the mirror is not who you are. And all the games that get played with the Halloween costume isn't who you are either. And suffering and pain are not delightful attributes to cling to, guys, and death for that matter. You know, it's a big, huge brick in the foundation of the ego as well. And do you want to continue to cling to things you tell me that you don't even like? But again, we're like that little child that's, you know, being dragged out of her home, even if it was a horrendous home. It's the only home we are consciously aware of that we've lived in. So despite the fact that this should be, you know, kumbaya, let's go, it's not our experience due to the fact we're still so identified with this and literally addicted to it, not just identified with it. But slowly that voice will keep calling us home. And slowly we'll catch on. And like you said, with the words in the book. I mean, I used to put a question mark in the column if I couldn't understand a sentence. And then years later, I would go, why do I have that question mark in the column? Because as we keep learning, practicing, processing the course, the pieces of the puzzle start to come together. And we know when you're physically doing a puzzle, after a while, the picture becomes rather clear and you've got a couple, you know, missing spaces. But initially it's just like, what is this? You know, where can I even find two pieces to fit together? And in a lot of ways, that's exactly how the course unfolds as well. And I just want to, before we go on, I just want to make a comment that, you know, so often people in the course will talk about the idea that they don't remember being afraid of God. And certainly the way this has been set up, it's a camouflage that keeps the awareness that we are afraid of God from our conscious awareness. But if you think about being connected with God means there's no fear, no guilt, no aggravation, irritation, separation, duality, attack, none of that exists. So to any degree that any of that, and again, we could go on for days adding adjectives there, but if any of those still hook you, it's a representation that you're not aligned with God. And if you're not aligned with God, you're afraid of God because you've chosen the opposition. So, and then not only that, but you're also going to see your brother through that light, because when we chose for separation, we took on not only the identity of me being an innocent victim, but the experience of my brother being my perpetrator. So we purposely set this up to hide this because we're afraid to go back here. And as we become willing to drop this, we begin to connect with that memory of love. And as we start to connect it, there's a richness to it. There's an expansiveness to choosing that. And then the world becomes less tolerant, and our desire to move towards that oneness and that connectedness will become heightened, because we will have become aware that this doesn't offer me what I thought it was going to give. You know, when we chose separation, we did it because we wanted to be in charge. We wanted to be right. We wanted to be an individual. We wanted to be special. And we wanted to be the creator. Well, that's been going on for eons of time. And this is asking us to drop all that. Well, how do I drop something as huge and intense as that in one easy drop? It's not likely to happen. And again, that's why I've always loved the statement in the Course where Jesus says, all I expect is your little willingness in any given moment. And when that willingness in any given moment opens up, then it reveals what the truth is, and that takes the place of your investment in what the ego is. But we have to, intellectually wrap our head around why I even need to go through that process. Because, the way I see it, I was fine until so-and-so showed up and fill in the space of what and who so-and-so is. If it wasn't for them, I'd be at peace. That's an inaccurate piece of information. We're not at peace because of this choice, not because what this character says or does, or the toaster or the car or whatever. It's because when that comes to me, it triggers the memory of this, which I don't want to look at. So as Helene mentioned earlier, we need to use the world to find out that I can have my peace disturbed. This literally is my salvation to go home. We projected it here. Now I forgot it's in my mind. And the only way I ever access the awareness that my peace can be taken away is through this experience. So that's not something we want to eliminate or hide or pretend it's not there. We need to bring that up and go, oh, there it goes again. I've lost my peace. Thank you for that piece of information. Very helpful. I must have chosen against the love of God. And now, when I'm ready, I can choose for love if I want. Before, I was brain dead and there was no option. I was stuck. I really was an innocent victim in the world because there was no other option to choose from. Even though the option was always there, we had no awareness of it because we made a pact with the ego that we would never, ever, ever, ever go back to oneness. So we kind of set up the whole deal, jumped in, and then forgot that we set it up, and there really was no way out in the context of the illusion.
Marianne.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and when that happens, the illusion, the dream world, becomes a gift to us rather than something that we have to slog through. It's like you find the end of the rainbow, sort of thing. You just follow the yellow brick road, and you do what the Course says, and you look at everything, and wowie zowie, look at that.
Yes. Absolutely. And not everybody was on the call yet, but Jason made the comment when we first came on that, as Course students, our goal in life will eventually be, I'm here to awaken. Well, the average person on the planet is not going to respond to what are you here for with that response because they're not even aware that that's something to do. But to the degree we really want to go home and we're weary of the experience of the illusion, that is heavenly. And my brother, you know, as my husband always will tease and say, we need to send them flowers. They're my gift home. They're my salvation. Because the only way I can ever see what's in the blueprint in my mind is by looking at what's on the outside. It takes my peace away. Now, if I'm identified with the ego, which we all are, that doesn't feel like good news. But as you understand it on a deeper and deeper level, it makes more sense. And then you're going to embrace that my brother is showing me what I didn't know what was going on. But initially, that's not real ego friendly. And we're not going to buy them flowers. Kill them off maybe, but no flowers here. All right, anybody else before we go to the next paragraph? Okay, don't hear any voices.
A question.
Yes.
Can you say again? You said something like, to the degree that I'm weary and tired of the illusion.
Okay. Yes.
That will show whether I'm aligned with Holy Spirit.
Okay. Well, understand that when we first come to the Course, there's a good chance we stumbled on the Course because there was a moment where there was a crack in the cosmic egg of the illusion. You, each one of us individually in our own way, had a moment where the world was not giving me answers, and I've tried everything I could possibly do on my own, and I need help. And maybe those words were not used, but somehow, some way, that came like a pimple to the head. You know? Okay, so at that moment, there was this, I need help. Then for many of us, we found the Course, and maybe we found other things that came along first, but then we found the Course. And then the Course explains that that's the crack of awareness to begin to take you home. Okay, so now I have the way, but that doesn't mean I'm eager to take that way. In fact, I'm not eager. You know, what I want is this idiot to get out of my way so I can be okay. I mean, that's the bottom line. If we think anything else, we're kidding ourselves, okay? And let me find the way that I can manipulate them to get them out of the way. Yeah, what were you gonna say, Lori?
So the crack of awareness,
yes,
is the moment where I recognize there could be another choice.
Correct. Or I'm willing to find another way that I haven't been able to do on my own.
Okay.
Okay. So
Willing.
yeah, willingness is, I mean, I love that word in the Course.
Yeah.
I think that's just perfect. So, okay, so now I'm like this much willing. Yeah. Okay, but I'm not really willing. I'm so miserable I can't stand it anymore. And for this instant, I'm willing to drop it just to find, you know, to appease the gods or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so then becomes the dance. Okay, so we now have this answer. What's the answer? Nothing happened.
My message.
Well, I'm addicted to a world where there's a whole lot goes on and there's a whole lot taking place, and I'm very easily sucked into the world like a vacuum cleaner that says, oh no, this is important, this is valuable, you need to be here, you need to do that, and you need to be in control, blah, 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 blah. So though this answer is now at least subtly an awareness to me, the world is going to continue to pull me in. And again, the world does not have control over us. We have given the world this control because we made that pact that I'm going to stay stuck in the world and then I'll not go home to love. Because that would mean I have to look at the fact that I chose this, and I'm not going to go running back to God because I don't trust him. But every moment that we choose for that little willingness, and we drop this to find out what the little willingness could present to me, I am now investing in this. And any moment I'm investing in this, I'm not investing in this. And so this starts to, you know, my investment starts to increase in truth, and the dream starts to dissipate. Now, the challenge with that is we've been investing in this since the Big Bang. We've just now started putting, like a penny over here. So this one far outweighs this one in consciousness, not in reality. Because in reality, this is the only one that really exists. But in our experience and our investment in this is huge. And so the game becomes, which one am I going to choose? Which one am I going to choose? And though, if we really got that this was a pile of poop and this is a pile of whipped cream, and I don't like poop and I do like whipped cream, I would always choose this. But the way this is set up is there's just enough shiny coins over here that we keep being drawn into the belief that the world has something to offer that I want more than this. But as we keep practicing, processing, this becomes less and less of value to me, and that becomes more and more valuable to me. So the moment comes where nothing here has value and only this has value. And there's a sweet little line where Jesus basically says, if you wanted the peace of God and you wanted it more than anything else, it would be yours. And so we use the world, as Helene said, to become aware of the fact that I don't value that more than this. I still have value in the world, but
So-
not from a judgmental place of observation, just simply the realization the facts are. Yeah. So it is definitely a process, to say the least, and not always a fun process, because there's a part of us that really, really, really intellectually believes I want this more than I want this. And how I respond at any given moment is really telling me what I wanted.
So Marianne,
Yes.
when we deal with physical pain, like in my case, I have these burning eyes for some reason. I don't know why, but I'm being an innocent victim, right? In having that.
Absolutely.
And then, but how do I let that go? Because it's painful.
I'm very well aware of how pain plays. Yeah, and and just try to be gentle with yourself. Try and don't add guilt to the fact that you have that pain in your eyes and Marianne doesn't today. Okay, because there's it's a big temptation to take the specifics of the difficulty in our lives and say, number one, mine's worse than anybody else, which is a wonderful ego ploy of, I really am the innocent victim. And it's hard not to go there because this doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem fair. So be very gentle in not A, browbeating yourself, or B, thinking that you must be really bad because you have this really bad scenario going on in your life. Understand it doesn't matter what the scenario looks like. If you're not at peace, you're not at peace. And on some level, you are still identified with the ego, and there's some string that's attached that isn't ready to let go of, to allow it to step over here. Okay, so what do you do with it? You keep working with it. Okay, so think about, and I know you've shared that this difficulty's been around for some time. So it's not like it just showed up today. So think of it as a gift to you, as a reminder that every time you become consciously aware of that challenge for you, that you can, in that moment, choose to drop it to the best of your ability and ask for help. Because ultimately, all these things that can disturb our peace are really insignificant. But if we can use those as a reminder, oh, this is an opportunity for me to choose for love instead of this. And just keep doing your best to keep bringing it back. And then watch how it's going to pull you in and go, this isn't right, this isn't fair, maybe I should go to the doctor. And of course, the Course would say, go to the doctor if you're inspired to go to the doctor, take medication if you're inspired. But keep working with this from the level of your mind and keep asking to have your mind healed that has chosen this specific experience because it's too afraid of the love of God. And I wish I had a magic wand and we can make it disappear, Jason. Believe me, I wish I could, but that's not the way this process works. And again, on some level, and I'm going to point you out, and this is not you know, Jason specific, but on some level, when we're suffering in such a manner, we want the illusion more than we want this, even if we're not consciously aware of it. Okay, and that's, again, not good or bad. It's just an awareness, because if I wanted this unequivocally more than this, I would be experiencing the results of this. So don't use that as a, boy, am I bad, boy, am I terrible, you know, what's wrong with me? None of that kind of stuff is what we want to do. We just want to use it as a reminder, okay, I must still be, you know, too afraid for the love of God. And
So do I say something like nothing happened?
No.
No.
not necessarily, because obviously at that point you believe something happened. You know, I mean, unequivocally, you're convinced. You know, there's a couple areas in the course where it says, if there is pain, there is no God. If there is God, there is no pain. Well, I'm in pain. Damn it. You know? That's my experience right now.
Where does the pain come from?
Well, it has to come from your mind. Absolutely.
Yes.
And
Yeah, I find it helpful with when I'm working with pain is I notice that when I'm not thinking about it, it's not there.
well, there can be that too.
And I have noticed that on several occasions that, you know, to the point now that, and then don't get me wrong, when I'm in pain, you know, I'm experiencing pain, but I don't take it quite so seriously because of, I've noticed that so many times now.
Yep.
And it's a Byron Katie thing, because she said, you know, you're in pain, but the moment the phone rings and it's the phone call you've been waiting for, you're running toward the phone. Are you in pain? No,
If you're really
I'm
paying
not.
attention, you're not. Yep.
Yeah. And then to go back to the shell crack thing, this came up for me this week. I was talking about this to Jim, interestingly enough. Isn't inherent with that, and I'm speaking from my own experience,
Right.
inherent in the shell crack is the beginning of the awareness that I'm the problem, that what I experience is 100% my responsibility. And I'm not saying I'm quite there yet,
Right.
but you know, even when I'm blaming and I'm attacking, etc., at some point, I'm going to sit down and look at that and realize it's my responsibility. I really think that that is a really important aspect on this path.
Right. I don't know that we would necessarily be consciously aware of that, but I would also say hidden in that package is the awareness I can't do this on my own. Okay. If I can't do it on my own, there has to be a higher something that I'm now calling on in order for me to get out of it. So I had to be responsible to have gotten into it. But I don't know if necessarily initially that awareness would be.
I'm not saying initially, but I
Right,
think
okay,
for
okay.
me, yeah, I think for me, it was, you know, the thought of maybe it's me,
Okay,
because there's one common denominator here.
absolutely, yes, yes.
I think that's what I'm talking about. And then getting, you know, I think the further I go on this, along this path, the more I'm seeing that I'm 100% responsible for my experience.
Yes, absolutely. And that one prayer in the Course, I am responsible for what I see. I choose the experiences that I have. I mean, it's not telling us that nice little prayer because, you know, it's nice words to throw out at us. It is serious. I am responsible for what I see. What I see in the world, not as Rose,
Right.
is responsible because of that choice.
Yes.
And that I think when any one of us come to that awareness and really unfold it and unwrap it and recognize those words are really meant to tell us exactly This is my responsibility, which feels, horrible because I love to point the finger. But when
Well,
I'm
yeah.
responsible, I can't play that game anymore. So
Well-
it becomes a responsibility on a responsibility, but it's a good responsibility in the respect that now I actually have a way out. This is
Yeah,
and pointing, not
when
having.
when I first really started to become aware of that, it was a blame thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's not their fault. Now it's my fault.
Well,
You
yeah,
can't be
and
a
I think-
victim.
Yeah.
Right.
You
Yeah,
can't be a
right.
victim at all once you realize that.
Right, exactly. But that was my experience in the beginning
Yeah.
was, oh, it's me and it's my fault.
Correct.
As I started practicing the course more, it's not a blame thing.
No, because what you did over there was instead of blaming them, you now blamed yourself. And, as somebody pointed out when we started reading today, where it said, you are the dreamer of the dream. When we first start reading, we think of that you as this. Well, whether I point my finger at this or this, I'm still pointing the finger at the character in the dream. And not the. So I think that's correct. Somebody must have their speakers on because I'm hearing a lot of verbiage here. Turn them off and then, okay. Until we get that the answer is not here, the problem is not here, and then go back to here, that's when that concept of I'm responsible for what I see starts to show up and make more sense.
And that's
And a
taking your
requirement.
power back.
What
Yeah.
was that, Helene?
I said that's taking your power back.
That's taking your power
Yes.
back. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But initially, since I believe, unequivocally, I believe I'm an innocent victim, and I no longer have them to blame, and then I blame myself, I'm still caught in the same level where the answer can't be found. So the ego just, lets us play in that avenue until we finally get that awareness. Okay, now we're talking about something totally, completely different. And this is where healing can happen. But that takes some steps as well. And the whole course is, I don't believe this. What is he talking about? And then eventually it's like, oh, okay, now we're talking here. Totally different experience.
Well, isn't also that when you're feeling pain, then that seems like it's your fault. Like no one else, like you were describing at first, the difference between what you feel or Jason feels, that
Right.
when you're feeling pain, that somehow you've brought that on yourself, is of the judgment of the ego on the physical body.
Yep.
And otherwise like, well, why did you do that? Or what's I wonder what I did. Or
right.
and I guess going to the doctor though is a step in the right direction, because you're trying to alleviate it, you're trying to figure out what it is, you're letting the doctor tell you things, and then when none of that really works, then you're thrown on your can again, and you might wake up to other things through the course. But so that way, whatever you do, when you're in pain, whatever you do about it, Jesus doesn't judge you.
No.
And you're free to pursue whatever you think, because if that's what the ego is going to do to us, then we're going to go to the doctor, and we're going to see what they say, and they'll say, well, it might be this and it might be that, and maybe something will work, and maybe it is just that. But then you'll see what, kind of like you explore what the doctor says and see where you get snagged with that, and then that becomes even more clear that it's that you have some control over it with the Holy Spirit, that the Holy Spirit is going to help you, or that's the only recourse you have then.
Right.
Marianne, did you say that when there is pain, there is no God?
Well, that's a quote from the Course, yes. because if you're experiencing pain, you're not aligned with love or God. And again, we're living in this world at any given instant. So the fact that any of us experience pain, it represents that we're aligned with the ego and not with the Holy Spirit. But again, instead of making yourself feel bad because you're experiencing pain, which means you're not aligned with love, instead of spending a lot of time with that, do your best to drop it and ask to have it be healed.
Marianne, but can't you watch your body in pain?
Well, yes, you can watch your body in pain. And again, in the progression of coming to the point where you're really willing to let it go, watching it is very helpful. And see what the ego's up to. And, again, be very aware that the ego's job is to keep us over here. And initially, it's going to start with small little things that aren't real significant. But as we get smarter going over here, it's going to up its ante. And, the body is a wonderful place to practice that because we're very involved with this character called me. And so it just, pokes a little pain here, and all of a sudden I'm in the whirl of the body. And understandably, because that's our identification right now. And again, the hero of the dream is in pain.
Question.
Yes.
It may be my interpretation, but one of the things that I noticed in growing up with standard religion
Okay.
was the fact that often cases, not always, but with your parents or maybe relatives or maybe somebody in church or whatever, will identify the fact that if you have done something and sinned, then you will get punished.
Yep.
And I can remember one of the people came to the church, and he was riding on a tractor, and a branch hit him in the eye.
Mm.
And he told the preacher, he says, "I can't remember doing any sin to deserve this."
Right.
And we still have that. Some people have that in the back of their mind. And that's why whenever you have a problem, you kind of blame yourself on the fact that you have done something to deserve it.
Correct. And I think a lot of that actually connects with this realization that as the character called Marianne, I feel guilty because of the thought in my mind. But because we think we're in the world, we projected all that into the world, when we have an experience like that, we're going to filter it through that Marianne did something bad, or Marianne did something wrong, or she sinned and he sinned. And, to re-evaluate, I guess you could say, the teachings that many of us have had as far as spirituality is a process of letting go a thought system that no longer serves us. And many of us were brought up in spiritual churches of some sort or another. And there's lots of rules and regulations. And they're all based on some concept of you've got to be a good person in the world. Well, if we understand the person that's in the world is a puppet, then the puppet didn't really do anything in the world that was bad. The thought or the puppeteer that's running the puppet is where the problem again lies. And again, the reason why Jesus in the Course repeats over and over in different ways this concept of getting in touch with this is where the problem lies, not this. And I think, for a lot of quote unquote spiritual people, they tried to be really good people in the world, following the rules, whether it was the 10 Commandments or our society's rule. But many of them come to the realization that I've done all the things that I'm supposed to be doing good, and somehow this doesn't answer it any longer. It doesn't answer the question. Something's missing from this formula. And then that's what will be the catalyst for people to look deeper for something else as well.
Mary Ann,
And is what I have done sometimes is that I get mad. I say, my mind was strong enough to build the ego who built this world, built these trees, and made this body. So damn it, you're strong enough to get rid of my pain.
All right, then. Here you go, Jason. I think you got the answer.
may I add something in
Sure,
here,
sure.
Mary Ann? What is definitely not helpful is thinking that I have to figure this stuff out. That somehow my contribution of knowing something is going to further the truth. And I am much further ahead if I just open the door, become willing, and let go of what I think is the problem. You know, lessons 79 and 80 are among my favorites in the course.
Yep.
You know, I think there's a problem. There is no problem. Okay.
Yes.
If I can leave it there on that doorstep, then I've just like cracked the opening a little bit further, you know, for the light to come in, as it were.
Don't want to bring in men and women, but
What was
men
that?
have a tendency to try to solve problems.
Well, I would say we all have a tendency, Don. We may do it in different ways, but I think what Helena's coming to the awareness through the practice of the course of, you know, those 2 workbook lessons, well, you know, how can I solve a problem that doesn't exist?
Right.
And that dawns on us, we're in a whole new arena, because I'm no longer within the world trying to, you know, figure out one of these and solve the problem. When I realized the problem isn't a problem in the world, the problem is that, and now I can.
It's in the mind.
What's that?
It's in the mind.
It's always, and again, that's why I keep reinforcing these sections, because it's so vital that we keep going back to that, even though we're going to be drawn into this. And, you know, how fast can I get back to, wait a minute, it's about my mind. It's about my mind. It's not about this.
So
But,
use the mind to heal it.
well, but it's
If
not,
it can make you sick, if it can make you sick, or it can make you well.
right. But even with that, we got to be a little cautious, because if it's my mind doing the opposite of what my mind did before, I'm still in my mind and not in the mind. And it's a tricky scenario.
I think it's just a matter of saying help and leave it at that.
All right, that'll work. Go for it.
Because what happens with me is I'll say help and I'll keep trying to visualize what I'm supposed to, what's oneness and everything, and nothing happened, and I'm throwing all these thoughts in my head, trying to basically say that I am one with God, you know, and all of this sort of stuff. And then my ego subtly gets in there and starts being judgmental about, you know, oh, really, you're you're one with God. I don't see God, or, you know, I just start throwing stuff in there. So I'm just beginning to think that as much as you learn the course and you understand all the details of everything, it's as simple as saying help.
Yeah.
I think I contribute. I need to help the process along.
Right.
I need to
right.
get out of the way.
Yeah.
But again, when you go to that place, which most of us do, just be very gentle with yourself and smile and go, oh, there I go, trying to figure it out again. And you just brush it aside. Don't let it eat you alive. Okay. And you know, that's the process of the undoing, is to get into the doing, and then realizing the doing isn't doing what I wanted to do any longer. And then we're going to be much more willing to be in that space of, here it is, dude, I haven't got a clue.
No, but don't forget that a hypnotist can hypnotize you and make a spoon hot and give you blisters on your hand. So that shows you how powerful that the mind is.
Exactly.
And when I recall one time I was working with my hands, and I had cut myself, but I forgot that I cut myself, and I kept on working, and then it dawned on me, hey, wait, I cut myself. And I looked, and I could look down through the skin, and all of a sudden the blood started to come up. But before that, the blood did not come up.
Yep. Or you'll hear athletes who, like say for instance, an ice skater who will fall and break their leg, and they'll continue to do their performance. And then when they're done, find out that their leg was broken, which is impossible. Someone could not do that, but our minds are that powerful.
Right.
Yep.
You pass? There's Zoom on there.
Yep.
Marianne,
Yes.
I really can relate to what Pat is saying and Jason is saying. The pain, the power of the mind and words is so profound, because I have been going through a lot of physical pain, and it started back in 2017 through various things that have happened to me, including accidents and other things that have come down. But it has been continual, and I have thought, what did I do to deserve this? Did I do something wrong? Did I go the wrong way? Did I say something to somebody? Did I offend somebody? Is God mad at me? And this went on and on and on through the years. And it's hard to let go, because you continue fighting in the world with your situation with other people, which enhances the physical problems as well. But then with the Course in Miracles coming up, and it was like my soul says, I can't take anymore, I need help. I just got to get some help. I'm not going anywhere. I'm physically going downhill, because no doctors are able to resolve these situations that I am, and I still am today in some aspects. But that Course of the Miracles helped me to step in and trust you, what you were saying, to try it.
Right.
Just try it. So little by little, it started to come through of somewhat of a healing, to understand, to let it go. But I'm still wrestling with it. There are days when it does arise, and you're right, when something that you want to do, such as my photography, or I go do something, you forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the pain is gone. Mm-hmm. And I realize, oh, I can do something about this. So I'm still working on it. I still am going through issues. I have gotten some good answers. But I think the biggest thing, as you guys are saying, that are helping me so much, is let go and let God. And I think that is the key right now, where I'm at, to finish this out, to really refine my spiritual, mental, and physical, and balance that out.
Yep.
But the other part of that is like what Colleen was saying, which is recognizing that I don't have anything to contribute to this problem. And I constantly validate myself and say, yes, I have to understand this. I have to contribute to this. I have to be the one solving this problem. And that's all ego, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And just do your best to step aside a little and just watch the ego do its contortions, and not take it so personally. It's gonna just like be an acrobat, just dancing around with the next new move. And that's what its job is. And as we get smarter, become more aware, we become more like the investigator with our mirror, and we're checking everything out. We can't get duped into the ego as much as we used to. But initially, it's got us by the tail, and it's going to whap us every which way. And slowly, it doesn't whap us as much.
I like what you say about taking your power back.
Mm-hmm. But this is the first time we're really taking our power back. You see, we think if I'm right and they're wrong, I've got my power. But all I'm doing with that is investing in the separation and increasing it. when I drop my need to be right and make somebody wrong, even if it's the pain, then I've decided that I can't have oneness. And when I'm ready to drop it, that's when I can have the experience of it shifting. But it's, I'm just, observing it, just amazed at the way the ego is set up to pull us in. Think about when you're in pain. I don't know how you do it, Jason, but I'm guessing it's probably similar. Your mind just goes, and this hurts and that hurts, and I don't know. Or you wake up in the morning and you go, oh, am I in pain? It just is so over encompassing and has our attention to such a huge degree. And that's the way the ego works. It's until
But God, no, but God does not come down here to heal you. The only thing he heals is your mind.
correct.
So where was all this pain at? But it's in your mind.
Mind, yes.
And realize lesson 5 applies to that as well. It applies to everything. So even, and pain is, it's difficult because it screams the body's real.
Oh yeah. And that's, think about if the ego's using that, it knows that it can't suck you in like it used to. But the body, ooh, yeah, we got some juicy stuff here. Yeah, because we're so identified with being the hero. If we knew we weren't the body, how could pain be anything to us? It couldn't. It would be impossible. But that's not where we are yet. And we need to respect where we are and not judge ourselves. And slowly keep stepping back from it. All right, on to paragraph 14.
So the bottom line is heal your mind.
The bottom line is your mind. That's the only thing. Not only the bottom line. You
Right.
think the world is where it's at, man, but it's not. Where it is in the mind. Because the mind is what operates the body.
Right.
As long as there's a problem with the body, it's coming from the mind. Always, always, always. But
Right.
that's not our experience. Our experience is I woke up and my hip hurts, or I woke up and this problem is happening.
Right, but our experience is wrong.
Exactly. All right, so paragraph 14. Accept the dream he gave instead of yours. It is not difficult to change a dream when once the dreamer has been recognized. Rest in the Holy Spirit and allow his gentle dreams to take the place of those you dreamed in terror and in fear of death. He brings forgiving dreams in which the choice is not who is the murderer and who shall be the victim. In the dreams he brings, there is no murderer and there is no death. The dream of guilt is fading from your sight, although your eyes are closed. A smile has come to lighten up your sleeping face. The sleep is peaceful now for those happy dreams. All right, so what he's saying in this first line, accept the dream he gave instead of yours. Well, my dream is a dream based on the separation of, and then the effect of guilt, sin, and fear of which gets projected into the world. That's the dream of the ego. Beginning, end, in between, and everything else. And anything that even has the experience of love is a false form of love. It's all based on guilt, sin, and fear, and the opposite of what truth is. So when he's saying, accept the dream I gave you instead of the one you're playing in. But how do I do that? I have to be willing to relinquish the dream I'm dreaming. I can't take this dream over here, but I can drop this dream even for a moment and choose for this. And that's the invitation he keeps presenting to us. Don't bring the garbage with you. Leave the garbage at home. I've got a much better experience for you. But we keep trying to bring the garbage over here, and it can't heal because there's only place for one. There's only one throne. Either the ego sitting on it or the Holy Spirit. And as long as I'm insisting on in any way, shape, or form identifying, believing I have control of, or I'm this character, I'm saying, God, just stay away. I got this under control. And, again, we're so identified and addicted to our identification of who we think we are. It's difficult for most of us to be willing to completely let go of that investment. And so you start with where you are and slowly build it up to the point where you really are dropping it in order to find out what truth is. It is not difficult to change a dream when once the dreamer has been recognized. Now, Jesus has a little bit different take on this because he's not in the dream, so it's not a big deal for him. But for us, since we're so addicted to it, it's still, like we intellectually all understood today, right? That who the dreamer is. It was the Son of God. But as we practice within the context of the illusion, we keep getting duped into or pulled into believing this is real, even though intellectually in my mind, I might have gotten that concept. So now the process is not only that my mind is over here, that my investment is over here as well. And that's where the practice of the Course is put into play. And it's always a constantly, do I believe I'm the dreamer of a dream of insanity? And if I believe I'm the dreamer, I can now choose differently. As long as I identify with Marianne, can't happen, can't be healed. Rest in the Holy Spirit and allow his gentle dreams to take the place of those you dreamed in terror and in fear of death. And I've always thought it was quite unique that throughout the Course, Jesus is basically telling us what we're going through. He knows it better than we know it. He knows we're in a dream of terror and fear of death. Well, most of us are oblivious to that when we initially start. Most of us go, oh, well, there's a couple things that are wrong, but, we can take care of those and fix those. We can add a new shingle to the house and everything will be cool. We don't get that the entire dream of the illusion is coming from the thought of the ego. Now, as we keep choosing for this, and as it talks about the very last line, I'll skip there real quickly. The sleep is peaceful now, for those are happy dreams. When we drop this and start aligning with this, we will still be dreaming, but we'll be dreaming of the story of truth instead of the story of the ego, until one day we awaken from all of it. But the progression of this process is to begin to experience the happy dream until we're done with it, or until we're actually there, and we are less invested in the dreams of the ego. All right, so he brings forgiving dreams in which the choice is not who is the murderer and who shall be the victim. Well, there is no murderer and victim in the happy dream or the dream of forgiveness. And keep remembering, the definition of forgiveness in the Course is not, this person's an idiot and I'm going to forgive them, as most of us probably learned in Christianity. The concept of forgiveness in the Course is, none of this has happened. We're still at home in love. Totally different context or understanding of what forgiveness is, according to the world and according to what the Course is. Because when you're in oneness, there is no perpetrator, there is no murderer, there is no victim. Duality doesn't exist, it's gone. So that's why I can't hold, hate or anger or upset at my brother or my pain or anything else and then live over here. Because it can't happen. Because in oneness, there isn't another or a something, just one. In dreams, he brings there, in the dreams, he brings there is no more, in the dreams, he brings, there is no murder and there is no death. Murder and death are not words that are in the vocabulary of truth. They only live in the vocabulary of the choice for separation. The dream of guilt is fading from your sight, although your eyes are closed. And, sometimes we've talked about the idea that one of the main challenges we have is that we're afraid of the love of God. And that's one of the reasons we cling to the ego, even if we're not consciously aware that that's what we're doing. But as we read, the Course is this very gentle unfolding process. So as we're still dreaming, we're going to have the experience of a happier dream, a less fearful dream, a dream that there isn't as much guilt, sin, and fear or attack involved in it. And that's going to be our experience as we progress on this process, till the point where we're only dreaming the happy dream, and then we will automatically go to the connection of oneness and not play in the dream at all any longer. So he's saying the dream of guilt is fading from your sight, although your eyes are closed. And I'm sure people that have been involved in the Course for some time will start to realize, the person that's sitting here today is not the same person that walked in the Course X amount of years ago. You'll start to become aware that you don't get pulled into the ego as deeply as you used to. And even if you do get pulled into the ego, you don't stay there as long as you used to, which is a representation of the progression that you are spending more and more time over here. So our guilt is starting to fade away, even though, again, we're still asleep. A smile has come to lighten up your sleeping face. And again, we talk about the idea of we don't take it so seriously. We don't get sucked into it. We don't get pulled into the world in the intensity that we used to. And the reason is because we've now ordered new things from the catalog. We're not ordering guilt, sin, and fear, which we normally automatically order when we're choosing for the ego. We're spending more time choosing to connect with truth. Not that we figure out what truth looks like, but we're willing to drop this to find out what it looks like. The sleep is peaceful now, for these are happy dreams. And again, the unfolding process is taking us through this gradual stepping stones that will bring us to the experience of happier dreams. Now, I want to make sure you're really aware of the understanding of what this means. This doesn't mean that suddenly everything in your world is going to be this beautiful, everywhere you turn, it's going to be beautiful and kumbaya and whatever. Be very aware. Again, this is a mind experience. It's not the body experience. And the example of Jesus dying on the cross, we would not look at Jesus dying on the cross and say, wow, look at that nice, happy dream over there. But from Jesus' perspective, he saw it as a happy dream because he was looking through the lens of his healed mind instead of his ego mind. So it doesn't necessarily mean, and it can shift the awareness on the outside, and enjoy that if it happens, but that's not the goal per se. The goal is that you align with your healed mind, which means I have to drop my sick mind. And again, go ahead.
And this is why he didn't feel any pain on the cross.
That's correct.
Because
Exactly.
he was in his right mind.
Correct. And, for most of us to imagine being in an experience of dying on the cross, it would almost be impossible for us to wrap our minds around the possibility that we could go through an experience like that and not be affected and not be in pain and not have any judgment or attack towards our brother who seemingly was doing that to us. And again, it's not for us to decide how to come to that place, but it is up to us to be willing to drop our investment in that thought system and the effects of that thought system so that we can be shown what that experience would look like.
And so when you ask for help, the trick is to leave go of the ego.
And
And
leave go, yes. And leave
that's the
go,
hardest part.
yeah. And to leave go of any investment in what the outcome is going to be.
Right,
Because
right.
we like our outcomes and we think we know. And that's something that we don't know. I think somebody mentioned earlier, maybe Jason, of the idea, I don't even know what the problem is. So how the heck could I know what the answer is or the way it should be solved? But in my little limited mindset, I think I know the answer. And
Right.
so again, a lot of this is letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go in all different.
But it's not just that I think I know the answer. It's that I think I need to know the answer.
Well,
So I constantly keep thinking about it, and then it's like I'm on a treadmill.
yes, yes. And again, that's just another trap of the ego and another way it can keep you on the treadmill. And again, its job is to keep you on the treadmill, not because it has power over you or it's more powerful than the truth, but because we've invested our thought in that thought system over and over and over. So it's literally playing out the role of what we chose it to be. And that's why at this point, we want to start to look at it and go, wow, look at it, it's still going through its cycle, but look from here instead of down here. And that's going to end the investment in the cycle of staying on the ride. But
Of that I have found that when I ask for help or to change my mind, that my mind goes blank for a bit. I don't have any thoughts.
Okay.
But then quickly after it does pick up thoughts,
Right.
which is probably going back to the ego.
Right. Yep. Yep. Well, again, the ego has the upper hand, not because it's real, not because it has power, but only because we've invested in it to give it power. And as we keep working on letting it go, we're investing in the real power of reconnecting with what we are. And again, in any given instant, you're sitting here, you're sitting here. And the way I find out where I'm sitting is if I'm not at peace, I'm sitting over here. No
Right.
brainer, completely, absolutely the way it's working. And so that's then the perfect opportunity to engage in asking for help if you're ready to ask for help.
Right.
All right, paragraph 15. Dream softly of your sinless brother who unites with you in holy innocence. And from this dream, the Lord of heaven will himself awaken his beloved son. Dream of your brother's kindness instead of dwelling in your dreams on his mistakes. Select his thoughtfulness to dream about instead of counting up the hurts he gave. Forgive him his illusions and give thanks to him for all the helpfulness he gave. And do not brush aside his many gifts because he is not perfect in your dreams. He represents his Father, whom you see as offering both life and death to you. All right, so this is a little bit tricky in the respect that it makes it sound like Mary Ann is now going to pretend she sees her brother lovingly or innocent, or, he just was an idiot, but, I'm going to pretend he wasn't an idiot. I've got this under control. But what this really means is dream softly of your sinless brother who unites with you in holy innocence. The only way you can access your innocence and your brother's innocence at the same time is to step over here. You are not going to see your brother innocent. You can pretend you want to see him innocent. You can try to visualize him innocent. You can try to do whatever you try to do in the ego format, but you're not going to see him in the innocence of oneness unless you drop duality. Impossible. It might make you feel better. It might might even help you see your brother from a different light. And I would also say that in the progression of coming to the point where you really do it by dropping it, we'll probably all do a lot of that on the way, but you'll eventually realize that even when I do that, it does not fill that hole in my heart that is quenching for that love that can only be brought by oneness. And from this dream, the Lord of heaven will himself awaken his beloved son. So when we drop this and choose for this, we are inviting the Holy Spirit, God, Jesus, whatever words you want to put, to show us that we are part of that innocence and oneness. Dream of your brother's kindness instead of dwelling in your dreams on his mistakes. When we're in duality, the game is duality, kill or be killed, and I want to kill him off before he kills me off. So I don't want to see my brother as innocent. I need to perpetuate the dualistic party. But again, when I'm willing to drop that, throw up my hands and say, I don't know how to see my brother in innocence. I don't even know how to see myself in innocence, to be honest with you. But you keep telling me there's a way of seeing that innocence if I look through your eyes, and I'm willing to look through your eyes. Select his thoughtfulness to dream, thoughtfulness to dream about instead of counting up the hurts he gave. But again, I don't supplement my thoughts of seeing my brother guilty with thoughts of, okay, now I am going to see him through a nice way of being. I have to let my investment in doing this in any way, shape, or form, I have to drop that. Because I don't have the wherewithal to know how to see my brother through the eyes of love or oneness as long as I'm in duality. Forgive him his illusions and give thanks to him for all the helpfulness he gave. And I'm going to start with the second part of that sentence before I address the first part. And give the thanks to him for all the helpfulness he gave. Our brother gives us helpfulness because our brother reflects to us or projects, well, I'm going to say that again, because our brother is an effect of the projection of the guilt in my mind. And the only way I will ever know the guilt in my mind is if I can be brought to lack of peace by an experience of something that appears to happen outside of me. That's a telling story of I must have chosen wrongly and I can now choose differently. If I use my brother in any other way, in any other possibility, I'm reinvesting within the context of the illusion. But if I use my brother as a reminder, I must have chosen wrongly and I can do something differently because I've lost my peace, then I can be thankful for the helpfulness my brother gave. All right, so at the beginning of that sentence says, select his thoughtfulness, wrong line. Forgive him his illusions and give thanks to him for all the helpfulness he gave. So how do I forgive him his illusions? Okay, so both of these characters believe they're in illusions. They both believe they're sinful. They both believe they're guilty. And they both believe that something should come and take their peace away. Doesn't matter which side that we're sitting on, these would be flipped, but the same game is going on. So when I choose to drop this, instead of invest in my brother's guilty, and I'm going to show him how guilty he is, and reinforce his guilt, when I drop my investment in this entire storyline, throw up my hands and say, I haven't got a clue what the problem is, and I don't have a clue how to solve the problem, and I step over here, I have to bring my brother over here with me because now I'm looking through my eyes of the ego, or excuse me, of the Holy Spirit as I look on my brother, instead of looking at my brother through the eyes of my ego. So this is an automatic effect of me choosing this unequivocally instead of thinking I can come over here and leave the idiot here because he's not worthy of love, only I am. I have to drop the whole investment in the entire picture so that I can access this. So let's see. And do not brush aside his many gifts because he is not perfect in your dreams. So literally those moments where he represents not being perfect in your dream, you've made him not be perfect, so you had a legitimate reason to hate him before. So now we're being asked to kind of relinquish that investment of specifics of what he's doing and simply recognize I'm not experiencing peace here. It has nothing to do with my brother and it has everything to do with what's going on in my mind. And again, when you're ready, you can then ask for healing. And my experience is you're not going to practice the course because you're so enamored with your brother now. No, you're going to choose to practice the course because you're so miserable you can't stand it any longer and you want to find another way. And this other way just automatically brings your brother with you. And be very aware when we're identified with the ego, we request and require that somebody point a finger at us and make us feel, I'm going to say make us feel more guilty, but they're not really making you feel more guilty. They're just reinforcing the guilt that you already had in your mind. So we'll continue to do that for ourselves and our brothers as long as we keep investing in the ego. And it's only when we drop the whole picture, the whole scenario, the whole outcome, everything, and simply say, I want to see my brother through your eyes, that the total healing can take place. And then your brother represents his father, as line 7 says, whom you see as offering both life and death to you. And understand that when you identify with the ego, you're investing in life and death. When you're investing in the Holy Spirit, you are offering only life, because that's the only place life actually lives. And then the nightmare that we've been dreaming will slowly just fade away. Marianne doesn't have to figure out how to solve what's going on in the nightmare. She just has to be willing to awaken from the nightmare and find out what truth is. Any quick comments about that before we close? Nope. All right, so we'll do the usual. I will mute everybody. We will say the prayer, and then I will unmute. And if anybody wants to stay on the line for a little while, we can chat or answer questions. What got here? So again, I invite you to close your eyes and take a nice big deep breath. Oh, and let it all go. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the minds which you created and which you love. Amen.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Marianne.
You're welcome.
I want to thank Linda in particular, because I appreciate your sharing that, Linda. I haven't heard you. I know you've been kind of quiet in the class, but it seems like when I really appreciate what you shared today. It's just nice to see the story behind everything. So thank you. I hope you share more.